If you follow this process, you study, you apply, you measure, you iterate, and then you go again, you will be guaranteed results on the other side. Do you think you'll be able to build impressive skills by just showing up to class? Well, no, you can't. It's not true for me, it's not true for you, or any of the results on screen right now. They didn't come from just showing up. They came from following a very simple training structure that takes the chaos and the randomness out of your sessions and leaves nothing but progress. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 4-step framework that shows you how to study, apply, measure, and iterate to take all the guesswork out of building skills that are going to dominate training rooms and competitions time and time again. All right, so the framework we're going to be looking at is the SAMI. It's called SAMI. It's going to make it easy to remember, but basically it's study, apply, measure, and then iterate. These are the 4 steps we're going to go through in this video. When I first started studying the sport of Jiu-Jitsu, I was a very new white belt and I was eager to learn more. I figured that I didn't know shit and I wanted to find information from people that I thought could help me get there faster. And so I happened upon Kit Dale's Get Better Faster series, or whatever the fuck he calls it, and some Lachlan Giles instructionals, because that's just what I was recommended. So I was so eager to learn that I wanted to download these videos into my head as fast as humanly possible. But there was one problem. I still had a stupid fucking job in the way where I was teaching fat people how to get less fat. And so I didn't have a lot of time during the day to be able to watch these videos and study effectively. So where I had little breaks or a client canceled or something like that, I would pull out my phone, I'd go to Kit Dale's website, or I'd go to Fanatics, and then I would watch as much as I could. There was 3 issues with this. It was very random and very chaotic. So the likelihood that I'd remember anything is pretty low. The second problem was that I wasn't taking any notes. It's not what you watch, it's what you digest that's the most important. So if you're not taking notes, you're not going to learn anything. And the third biggest issue, and the main point of the study section of this video, is that because it was in between random sections in my day, it could be at 3 p.m., it could be at 11 a.m., but it was all over the shop and it was all over the day. And so the amount of stuff that I had in between watching the video and then actually going to apply it at my training session at 6 p.m. was massive. I was having conversations about Karen's issues with her fucking cat and the medication that she had to use and all this drama. And then I would go to a training session and try to apply what I'd learned. But I completely fucking forgot it and everything flew out of my head. I got that blank brain feeling that all of you are very accustomed to, and I learned nothing. So the biggest key factor with your study, I've gone on about this in another video where I break down everything you need to know, is that it must be as close to training as possible. Because let's be honest, you don't remember the conversation that you had 25 minutes ago with your coworker, so why would anything else happen when you're trying to study jiu-jitsu videos, especially in a distracting environment, so on and so forth. My number 1 tip is watch it in the car for 5 minutes just before you go to training, and there's a high likelihood that you remember everything that you just watched, or at least the gross majority. Which leads me into the next point of how to actually apply this study material. So we go into the second part of the framework, apply. Again, when I first started training, my gym didn't do positional rounds. It was 3 random techniques, and then there you go, put the music on, feed yourself to the wolves. And this was really fucking frustrating, because I was watching Kit Dale stuff, I was watching Lachlan Giles stuff, and the first one I got from Lachlan Giles was the Strangles Anthology of High Percentage No-Gi Chokes. And what you'll recognize is that high percentage no-gi chokes become very low percentage if you can't force the position where they actually come from. So unless somebody's turning up on their side or they're in turtle, you're kind of up shit creek without a paddle. And that's where I was. I didn't have the skill set to be able to force those positions in the rounds. And so even though I did study and start to study closer to my session time, I didn't have the ability to be able to apply the information in my sessions because a lot of the guys would just lay their back on the mat, not really do a whole lot, retain guard. You know who I'm talking about. Those flexible fuckers that just pull their feet behind the head, really annoying. You're not going to DAS a guy like that because they just refuse to engage. However, as soon as I moved to my current gym, I started doing positional training where we would work from mount, turtle, half guard, side control, where the opportunity for me to be able to apply the information that I was studying became a lot greater because I was already there. I already had tools that I knew I could use, and it gave me a much higher degree of success when actually trying to use the information. Now, if you were in the situation that I was in my first gym where they don't do positional rounds, ask your training partner, positional rounds. Ask your training partner if they want to help, or force the position. What I mean when I say force the position isn't what I just described in the story. It's if you're working on mount escapes and your partner is a bit of a dickhead and they don't want to help you out and do some positional training because that stuff's gay, it fucking doesn't work, just train hard. I'm sure you've had a conversation with a high belt where he says that, and he's literally using the same moves from 8 years ago and has never progressed ever. Don't listen to that cunt, listen to this cunt. Force the round to get as close as possible so that you can start working on your position. So if you're doing a open round and you want to work from mount, just let them mount you. Don't just lay there like this and then just let them mount you like I do to the white belt sometimes, because that would be very disingenuous and they probably don't want to train with you anymore in the future. And that's kind of burning training partners and it doesn't make sense. But don't try as hard to retain your guard as possible. And if they're inside control, let them go to knee on belly, let them mount you, and then you can start to work your positions. Because trust me, positional training as a part of this process is an integral piece to make sure that you have the most amount of time to be able to apply the moves that you're studying. And if you don't do it, you're just leaving your skill development up to randomness and chance, and nobody builds impressive skills by following randomness and chance. The third biggest piece of the puzzle is measuring, and nobody does this, and it's the reason why most people struggle to actually get progress out of the sport instead of just aimlessly flopping around hoping that an armbar falls in their lap. And it's measure. I actually stole this acronym from a time when I was doing cold calling on the phone, which was a terrible part of my life, and I'm not going to go into it for the 400th time, but it's called KPIs. Now, KPIs mean it means key performance indicator. And they're basically just guidelines to put you in a position to recognize if you're moving forwards and hitting targets or whether you're not and you need to fix a piece of the puzzle or not. So we used to work this way backwards. We need X amount of sales, which means we needed X amount of secondary calls. So it was a first call to get them qualified basically, and then send them to a second call so that the closer could finish it off. We used to call them closers and fluffers. And if you know what fluffing means in a particular industry, you'll find that quite funny. I was a fluffer. Very embarrassing, but also very funny. And so we would work out the amount of sales that we would need. We'd work out the closer's finishing rate. So many innuendos. Say it was about 50%. And so the amount of calls that we would need would go to the 50%, and then we'd work our way backwards from that for how many opportunities we would need to give him to get him to 50% close rate. Now for Jiu-Jitsu, it's your positional training where you're applying the studying. So in number 1 here, number 2 here feeds directly into number 3 here. And this is how the framework works. It's step by step. So you study, you apply, and then you measure what happened in the application process. The KPIs that I give to my students in my community, link down below, is at least 2 positional rounds per session, at least, of positional training using the moves that they've just studied within a 5 to 10 minute window of them arriving to the car park in training. So now they have not only what they're working on, how to actually apply it, and what to look for to see if they've actually made progress or not. See how I'm talking about this in terms of removing the guesswork? If you apply this structure, you get so much clarity on what's actually going wrong or right in your sessions, and it gives you a ton of data to be able to look at and then focus in the right areas, and then make massive leaps and bounds in progress. And it's actually less than what you're doing right now because it's less frustrating, it's less annoying, it's less time spent under side control, not knowing what the fuck to do about it, and just getting fed up with the sport, thinking about quitting. So it's actually a really clear and easy to follow process. And the final process that is probably the most important piece out of all of this, that's going to guarantee that you actually generate results instead of just more blank brain feeling, And the thing that most people likely forget to do is to iterate. So the last piece of the framework, iterate. Cross that T. I make a lot of these videos. I make a lot of videos on Instagram, and I used to do a lot on TikTok, but TikTok's a bit of a shit platform, and you just get a bunch of goobers telling you that your teeth are fucked up and I could bash you and there's nothing you could do if I have a gun. And I'm like, okay. But when a video would flop, when I first started out, I would blame things like the algorithm or the time that I posted at, and it was just bullshit. I would just go on to the next because I would blame things that were out of my control, so there was no point looking at the previous video. That's where I was fucking wrong, my friends. The whole point of iterating is looking at what you did in your session and analyzing, just like I analyze in my videos. Was it the hook that was really bad? Was it the context? Was it the content? Was it the imaging that was edited over the top of all of that stuff? Were there story elements that were missing? Was it confusing? Was it too long? All of these points are what you're going to iterate on top of. Because if you don't do this, you're just going to be flying blind in your training sessions from one session to the next, not knowing what you need to specifically work on to solve the problem that you experienced in the previous training session. And that's how you end up wasting a decade of training time, because you're just not focused in the right areas. It's also the reason most people's moves never get past entry level, because they don't expand on them and grow them with this iterating process. So in the iterating process, you're going to search for what went well and what went wrong. If you find something that worked really well, let's say you are using a knee elbow escape and you did a great job at getting out of mount straight into half guard, and then you had absolutely no idea what to do. Your iteration process for your next session, and the thing that you're going to go back around and start again in the study segment, is what do I do after I get to half guard from mount using a knee elbow escape? Then you'll realize that your main thing is to focus on getting an underhook to start to put their head high so you can wrestle up and you can go into lower leg shifts. And that would be an example of a positive iteration. A negative iteration is when you went to use the knee elbow escape and it failed completely because your opponent got an underhook before you could get your elbow inside. So now when we go back to the same process in the study section, we recycle this every single session, every single week to get progress on autopilot. You will then understand that you need to keep your elbow tighter towards your body. Can't be lazy having it out like this, because then the knee elbow escape doesn't work. So when you study that, you rewatch the same video that you watched in the first session. Your iteration on the negative side of things of what you didn't do well is now to pull your elbow in. And then you're going to recognize that your knee elbow escape works and you fixed your problem. You don't just sit there and go, oh, well, fuck, this guy just, keeps moving faster and his transitions are better. No, fuck that guy. You just need to iterate on what you did well and what you didn't do well, and then you get a solution delivered to you on a platter. Or at least my students do, because I take them through this step by step, show them how to put this into their training sessions, and their results just climb through the roof. If you follow this process, you study, you apply, you measure, you iterate, and then you go again, you will be guaranteed results on the other side. And you're not going to sit there staring over the steering wheel thinking about that cunt Dave that just submitted you 45 times and guessing as to whether it happened because of this reason or this reason, because you'll actually know with reliable data and a system that you can apply to make sure it doesn't happen again. So now you know exactly what to do in a 4-part process that's extremely simple and easy to follow. It's probably leading you to your next question, well, what the fuck do I even study in the first place? And if you want to know exactly what to study so that you can apply the Systemise framework to that and get results on autopilot, watch this video here and I'll take you exactly through what you need to work on step by step. See you in the next one.